works for the business desk of the Oklahoma Minute, and I'm here with Teah Corley, president of Premier Source Employee Benefits Consulting Firm, and we're talking about saving for retirement. And of course, the biggest thing is to save in your 401k.
Right.
And so, what are some of the most common mistakes that people do when they're saving?
Well, again, not participating in a 401k plan is a big mistake. That's one of the most common mistakes. Another is not starting early enough or not participating enough to take advantage of the free money or the employer match. So those are probably the three biggest.
Right. And I know a lot of times that low-income employees or young employees, they think they can't afford to save, but in reality, they can save by saving, right?
Right,
Tell me a
exactly.
little bit about that.
Exactly. Again, by participating in a 401k plan, the contributions that you make are taken off the top of your gross income. So eventually what happens is employees are actually taxed on a lesser amount. So if you're an employee who's earning $2,000 a month and you're contributing 10%, $200 is your contribution, you're only being taxed on $1,800 a month. Mm-hmm. So that can really add up, and they can end up taking home more than had they not contributed at all.
Right, you take home more if you do participate in a 401k.
Exactly.
Okay, and then how much should workers be setting aside?
As much as possible. Again, we know that not everybody can afford to put all of the maximum amount into a 401k plan. But putting in at least as much as the match, I think, is important because, again, if you don't, you're giving up free money. Mm-hmm. A lot of plans will match 50 cents on the dollar up to 6%. So, again, if the employee puts in at least 3%, they're going to take advantage of all of the match that's available from the employer.
Mm-hmm. How quickly can your money grow? I know it can grow exponentially.
Exactly. And, again, a couple of key concepts are at play when you talk about 401k plans. One being the tax-deferred growth. So obviously you're not taxed on your growth while it's in the 401k plan until you actually withdraw it later. The other thing is the compounded interest and the power of that over time. So you're earning interest on top of your interest versus just on your principal, and that can really add up. If you take a 25-year-old, for example, investing $100 a month at a very conservative rate of return of 6%, when they're 65, they'll have over $200,000 saved up.
I love that example.
Versus take a 35-year-old investing the same $100 a month at the same conservative rate of return of 6%, they would have just over $100,000. So you can really get a feel for the difference in the power of the compounded interest just by starting early. So it really can add up pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's great. And how about, do you have any recommendations for investing?
Again, the biggest thing is just don't freeze and do nothing. Our biggest, what I would encourage investors to do is educate themselves. There's a lot of information available out there, sometimes too much information. But I think taking advantage of your plan's investment advisory services. If you've got an advisor on the plan, calling them, getting advice, getting information about, also looking at the Morningstar reports that are available. If you're an investor who's not comfortable and you've tended to just put all of your investments in cash out of fear for not knowing what to do, target funds or life cycle funds are really a good choice there. What those do is it allows an employee to put their money into kind of an asset allocation model that's going to be managed essentially for them, and it's based on a certain target date. So the years they have to retirement, it'll automatically rebalance, so they don't have to think about doing that and keeping up with it.
Right, that sounds like my kind of fund. So
exactly.
That when you're younger, they'd be in the more riskier investments, and then when you get older, closer to retirement, they pull it back and they're more conservative, right?
Exactly.
For the most part, they should at least get in that target, what's it called again? Target fund when
right.
they enroll in the plan, and don't put off enrolling. Just get in and get in a target plan.
In fact, a lot of employers are using life cycle funds as the default fund, and a lot of employers are now taking advantage of auto enrollments so that employees automatically are enrolled the minute they're eligible. They can opt out.
Right.
But again,
don't.
And very few do once they're in there. So
no, that's great.
So it is a good option.
Yeah, because I know that you and I were talking before that a quarter of all employees who have 401ks aren't participating in 401ks.
Exactly.
And that's just the kiss of death when it comes to retirement and saving money.
Exactly.
What are the biggest problems with employees trying to make their own investments?
Again, I think probably the biggest thing we see there is people that just freeze out of fear, and they either put all their money in cash, and again, there's the market risk there that they will outlive nest egg,
savings, yeah.
and the inflationary risk. Or we see employees chasing the markets. And again, once the cycle's down in the market, they tend to pull out and put everything in cash. So they're pulling it out when it's down, when they should actually be buying. So it's similar to the concept of shopping. You know, you don't wait for the 50% sales to go off before you buy.
Right.
But on the investment side, a lot of times that's what we have a tendency to do. So out of fear.
Like right now, when the market's up because of the announcement of the government coming in on Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, that's not the time to run out and think, oh, I've got to ride this tide and buy, because you preferably want to buy when it's lower, or better than that, maybe just do that life cycle target.
Right.
Yeah.
Or exactly when the talk is out that the market's up and everything's doing great, that's when people get their comfort level up, and that's when they want to buy. But what happens is then the prices are higher, so they can't accumulate as many shares. So when it is down, that's the time to buy. You buy more shares. They're not as worth as much. But then when the market recovers, and you know it tends to do that, it comes in cycles. So when it does recover, you own more shares. They're worth more. So it kind of works out that way.
Good. That sounds great. And are there any remedies for those of us that maybe didn't start investing as early as we should have invested, to catch up, kind of, if you will, for retirement?
Exactly. There are some remedies. The IRS has implemented a catch-up provision that allows employees, or anyone who's 50 or older, to make an additional 5% contribution into their 401k plans. So right now, the annual maximum that an investor can contribute into a 401k plan is $15,500 a year. So if you're 50 or more, you can add an additional $5,000 to that. The additional catch-up contribution is cannot be matched, but it still allows employees and investors to go ahead and take advantage of additional growth and tax-deferred growth.
Knock their salary down so their taxes are less. And I know that you and I were talking earlier that sometimes if you're in a couple, say, and the support spouse makes a modest salary,
right,
that sometimes they invest the whole salary if they can afford to,
exactly,
and live on just the other spouse's income. That it's a good idea to go ahead and invest the whole salary, because you're taxed less and you're saving toward retirement.
Exactly, up to the annual limits, but that's exactly right. So if they can afford to do that and put as much in as they can. Again, somebody at 40 who invests the $100 even, which hopefully they can put in as much as they possibly can, but $100 at the conservative rate of 6%, they'd still have $70,000 when they reach 65.
Right, and that's better than nothing, right?
Exactly.
Let's see, one last question. Employees change jobs a lot, and I know that you're going to say, do not touch that 401k. Either roll it to the new employer,
exactly,
or roll it into an IRA if the new employer doesn't have
exactly
a 401k or 403b.
Right. If they don't, again, what happens is a lot of times, and hopefully I think most plan sponsors are aware of this and they educate as they're rolling these funds out, but there's a 10% penalty if somebody, for early withdrawals before a person reaches 59 and a half. So in addition to it becoming fully taxable, if you don't roll it into another qualified plan or IRA, it's going to have an additional 10% tax on top of that. So you really eat into, again, that nest egg that you've set aside for retirement. Now, again, the best way to do that is automatic rollovers, so you never have to touch the money. A lot of times there is an option for a rollover. You've got 60 days if you take the cash out to put it into another qualified plan or an IRA, but that's a pretty limited time period, so it's best to do an automatic.
Just to do it, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for your time.
You bet. Thank you so much.